Bart the Nature Guy here, and I just wanted to walk through some of the camp gear this week with you. The first week we did tents, second week we did knots, third week we did kind of camp stove cooking on a 2-burner Coleman stove, and also the 1-burner, which I think you can still see here. I still have that out just as, for example of something that you might need to bring if you choose to go camping. What's some of the gear and the basic things that you need? Because we did food last week, I did talk about the coolers and making sure that you minimize ice usage. If you can see this is actually a very small cooler. I really enjoy having a couple small coolers, 2 or 3 of them. I pack all sorts of gear in them. They tend to stay dry and relatively airtight, which is kind of nice in regards to if you do have bad weather. But for something this size, I might have dry goods in one. Then I might keep my ice and like things that need to be frozen as solid as possible, and also drinks in another. So just something in regards to size wise, they're not very deep. I can keep all sorts of food in here. This is kind of a pre-packaged meal. I'm not going to go over a bunch of meal stuff today, but definitely enjoy my snacks out there as well, including chips and other things, as well as the healthy things. So for a typical weekend trip, I might have a bag or a cooler that has ice and cold frozen things, a thing that has dry goods that are more meal related, and then more of a snack cooler as well. But again, these are pretty small. I can hold it up with one hand, so it's only about 7 or 8 inches high by about maybe 18 inches long. So it's not that big of a cooler, but I really like this size. It's very easy to carry, especially if your campsite tends to be away from your car. It's something that I'm going to slide this underneath the table here. It's easy to walk with one of those as well. You see I'm set up on a table here. Most campsites that you're going to see, you're going to have picnic tables there if you go to a traditional like state park campsite, but not all the time. So I tend to carry a small fold-up table with me as well. But also right around the campfire, sometimes you think there's going to be like a grate or something that you can use, and that's not always true either. Having a nice little table like this, you can see the legs are real small, easy to fold up. This actually comes apart real quick by just removing a small piece in here. You can hear it banging around here. But it'll actually come apart very quickly and fold up relatively fast. So you can kind of see from this table, from this size, it'll actually fold up relatively small and get tucked away. So really it's a nice space saver, but especially when you're setting down pots and pans, especially if it's raining next to a fire, it's nice to have a little something to set your pots and pans on so they don't get muddy, and add to extra cleaning as you're cooking. So nice little extra table. I've definitely brought this out backpacking as well, but it is a little bit of extra weight that you don't necessarily need. But for a car camping situation, it's always nice to have a little extra something to set things on. I've also used this inside of large family tents, just to kind of set like more like cups and plates on so they don't tip over. If anybody's ever like tried to have a picnic and you set down a cup and somebody sits down over here and kind of pulls the fabric over a little bit, and then your drink tips over. So this is kind of nice to keep things upright as well inside a tent. So nice, easy little piece. So we have the cooler and the food piece. Another food piece that I want to go over is actually in almost anywhere you go nowadays, unless you have a car to put your cooler in to keep your food safe from the critters, it's going to be important to make sure you seal up your food in the evening. And one way to do that is hanging it in a bear bag. When we get into backcountry backpacking stuff, I'll definitely bring this. But this is actually a food container that you can put your food in. It's got little places for you to, your little screw-ins. So it's something that animal is not going to be able to get into. This would actually be put into a bag of some sort and hoisted into the air away from your campsite. And then you use what they call a bear bag, which is basically a small bag. It's got a lot of string here attached to it. And you put a rock or something heavy inside of this, could be sand, and you throw this bag up over a limb, and then you can use that string and it comes down on the other side, and then you pull the string up into the air, and along with it your food items go up, and that keeps it away from your campsite. It keeps it away from some of the critters that'll get to it, and it's a nice safe way. But when we get into more like the bear week later in the school year with you all, we'll definitely talk about more like food safety things, and we'll actually hang some stuff up in trees, and you'll see me kind of show what are the kind of best practices on distance away from trees. You definitely don't want to put it right next to the trunk because the bear's just going to walk up there. So how do you set up a couple of those kind of systems for keeping your food safe while you're camping in bear country. So food safe container for the critters. As far as like getting your gear out and about, I'll tell you one of the strongest, most economical like totes that you can bring for all this kind of stuff and putting it somewhere is actually IKEA bags. So I'm gonna give a shout out to IKEA. Those bags are a couple dollars, and I will tell you, even though I've seen some really hardcore hunters come out of vans, trucks, pickups, and they're carrying those two big blue bags. The thing that's nice about the blue bags is also when you look back at your campsite and kind of do a once over and a finale look, like, do I have everything before I move on? Those blue bags, you're not going to forget one of those blue bags hanging out in the woods. So, but there's lots of bags, the fabric bags that you can buy in situations, you know, like when you go to a grocery store, you might see like a fabric grocery sack. This is, you know, just another one of those kind of like canvas bags. It's got two handles on it, big open top. I really like that for putting in groceries, clothing, sleeping bags, that sort of thing. So could also be something like tarps. So we did tents on the first day. Obviously, when you go out, you're going to want to not forget the tent. Big key component to camping is the tent itself, and also a tarp. I've definitely been in tents where you think they're waterproof, but you know, if it gets in a really strong downpour, it might be time to put a little extra roof over your head. So having a tarp to put over that tent should the weather get really foul, or even as a wind block. Not only does it useful over your head, but sometimes it's useful going vertical, straight up and down, and really blocking the wind, especially around cooking and eating. When everything, if you get, like today's a really windy day. And I moved a couple times just to try to find a good site to make the video, because the wind was just blowing everything off the table. And if you've ever been around a bunch of paper towels and napkins getting blown all over, that's not fun. So using this as a windbreak can also be a help. This is just one of those kind of plastic 8-foot by 10-foot tarps. They're pretty inexpensive. They have lots of little holes for you to attach things to, so super easy to use. You got your shelter, you got your tent, you got your other shelter. I'm sure you guys can probably hear this wind right now. I got stuff blowing all over the place. So now, a couple other things. Minnesota camping. You're going to need your bug spray. So not only do you have your outside shelter that protects you, but you need your kind of shelter. So we're going to work our way in right now. So we're going to go with bug spray, making sure that you have that. If you don't have it, it can be really miserable. I'm not a big fan of it overall. I try to avoid it when I can, but when you can't take it anymore, bugs are getting you, absolutely utilize it if you can. Then we're going to work our way a little bit tighter now. So going into the rain gear. So I love having rain gear with me all the time. I don't care if the weather says, hey, it's not going to rain. I never listen to that. I always have rain gear on me. If you're really a person that doesn't want to have rain gear on you for whatever reason, I understand it, but at least bring yourself, like these are one of those little like tiny emergency ponchos. You'll see people pull them out at sporting events and stuff. They're just little clear plastic things, but at least have something for yourself. If it does get, the temperatures drop, it doesn't take much temperature drop to actually create a hypothermic situation for your body, especially if you don't have a lot of that outer shell piece, keeping that moisture off of yourself. Or if you're working real hard, actually your sweat from the inside out can actually, if you have been on a hike and you don't have rain gear and you're warmed up, and then you can actually get a chill from your own sweat, and that can be pretty detrimental as well. So just remembering that kind of gets into our next level of clothing. So our outer shell, from bug spray around here to our outer shell rain gear, especially in the summer. Obviously when we get into like winter camping, that's a whole different level of gear in regards to protecting your body from the elements. It really becomes, your clothing really becomes a part of your shelter on how you orchestrate your day. So rain gear, a couple different options on rain gear. One is kind of the most basic, just a little something you put over yourself, but any of the standard rain jackets that you'll see are going to be relatively good unless you get those total downpours. And then there's some higher end rain gear that can be of benefit to you. So now we're working our way in. Now we're going to work our way into the tent. You have your sleeping bags. So sleeping bags, people will oftentimes just remember the sleeping bag, but really to make it comfortable, you're really going to want to put something underneath you. This is a blow-up air mattress, and so you can actually see this only goes around down to about my knees, and what that is this helps. I use this for backpacking as well, and it just cuts off any extra space and ounces that I don't need around my feet. So it really supports my back and my sides for sleeping. but it really is a nice little extra cushion to keep those kind of little twigs and rocks off your back as you're sleeping. Just a little protective zone on that. So underneath the mattress, the thing that people forget the most, the pillow. It's so nice to have a pillow with you when you're camping. If you're car camping, you have that space availability. That's really nice to have. People forget it all the time and end up, I don't know how many times I've actually like rolled up sweatshirts and gotten to sleep with like kind of putting stuff inside the sweatshirt and making a pillow, which is absolutely adequate. And if I were backpacking and really trying to minimize my space, I would actually use my clothes to ball up like that and put it inside a t-shirt and use it as a pillow. Absolutely appropriate to do that, but you don't have to. You can use those big pillows. Oftentimes I just use a small pillow. Sleeping bags are there's such a huge range of sleeping bags, so please know that not all sleeping bags are the same. There's synthetic material, there's down material, and more feathered material. They go from like 45 degrees all the way down to like negative 20 degrees in regards to the level of cold it will protect you from. So, and also you'll see usually 2 bags with these. So a lot of times you'll see sleeping bags come in these big bags right here. This is great. It's important to store your bag open and kind of fluffy. When you want to backpack or condense it, most of the bags will come with a secondary bag with it, and it's called a compression sack, and it will really just allow you to squish down this sleeping bag super small and make it more packable, because they are pretty big and bulky, but those compression sacks are really helpful to minimize that kind of usage around. I'm gonna let this truck go by real quick, just for sound so you can hear me. So it just passed, we're all good. So sleeping bags, use the big sack. If I'm car camping and I have the space, I'm gonna keep it like this and pack the pillow, the mattress underneath, everything in one sack. That way I have just my whole sleeping system is all together. Should I need to kind of minimize that a little bit more, I'm definitely going to take this and then break it apart and condense it into the more of a compression sack. So that's one big piece of this as well in regards to your sleep system. So you have a mattress, you have your sleeping bag, you have a pillow. That usually gets people going. Some people use more blankets and clothes, especially when it gets hot in the summertime. You know, you're dealing with an 85, 90 degree day. Hopping into a sleeping bag, a lot of people just keep them unzipped and use it more as a blanket. Absolutely able to do that, or kind of unzip it and use that as the mattress, and then just kind of put a blanket over. You just want to bring that with you when you leave. So now we're inside the tent. We have chairs, like right here. You have the classic fold-up chairs. You can use tripod chairs, whatever's kind of comfortable for you. Just to kind of have a spot to sit, especially when the weather gets bad. Sometimes I'll bring, I'll have like cut up yoga mats, and I'll use those to sit on, especially if it's rained, just to be on the picnic table, just to keep the seat of your pants from getting wet. It's a nice, easy thing to do to kind of keep things a little bit easier. They don't take up a lot of space. The yoga mat's very, very thin. That's something very common. I usually have 2 or 3 with me in my car camping situation, in my box that I usually bring. But not all camping is in the beautiful daylight like this in the fall. It does get dark at night, so you do want to make sure that you don't forget some sort of light source. This is one of my favorites. This is real small. It actually unfolds like this, and it's actually solar paneled on the top, and it's actually a light. So no batteries with this. It just soaks up the sun all day, and then you pull this out at night, and it's like a miniature lantern. I don't bring big flashlights or big lanterns around that much. I tend to find headlamps and small flashlights are absolutely adequate and really minimize the amount of space that I'm bringing for light. A lot of times there's campfires going on at night. I just needed to kind of get myself around a little bit. Something like small like this, or even a headlamp. Oftentimes inside a tent, there's like a little mesh top, and you can actually put your headlight facing down, and so that'll kind of light up the whole tent. And I don't bring much more than maybe 2 options and possibly that lantern, especially if it is nice out and there's no bugs at night. You might want to do some, like I have three kids, like we might be drawing at night or doing something fun on a table or playing a board game. A little lantern like this can be go a long way to help take it into the evening. So in regards to other fun things, we just talked about like playing games and whatnot. I always find fun things to try to do when camping. Some people love to cook, some people love to hike. I always bring a secondary pack that's just for a day hike. And so And also for the very, very short ones, I even just pull out a beautiful fanny pack. Everybody needs a good fanny pack. So, but that's just gonna have in there some safety equipment. So it's gonna have, usually what I'll have in here is some level of small water bottle if I can. Just a small 12 or 16 ounce water bottles that a lot of times when people are camping, they're gonna bring a whole setup. Especially with COVID right now, there's a lot of lack of usage of the kind of standardized or centralized water source at campsites, so people are bringing their own. So a little water bottle can go in here, a little something for food. Usually for me it's a salted nut roll, just because I've always used those. They're really cheap and a lot less expensive than like some of the high-end kind of protein bars, and it definitely gives me about the same nutrients, and also some raw peanuts, which is always nice. So it's not always fully processed, and the textures are really nice that way. So in here I'm also going to put like any sort of trail map that I might have. I might put an extra battery pack for a phone, so if I am using any navigation on my phone, I might slide in an extra battery pack in here. I'm also going to put some level of first aid. So this is a big one, big first aid kit. I definitely have that all the time, but I'd also put just a miniature first aid kit in here, band-aids, some basic stuff. Always an extra headlamp, so if you do get lost, you might be starting off hiking in a day like this, beautiful blue sky, but if you get lost, you weren't expecting to be in the dark, but all of a sudden now you are. I'll always almost have an extra headlamp in this fanny pack, as well as some other things. And when we get into like the different types of packs, I'll do kind of a bag drop and pull everything out of my day pack, and we'll get into that more down the road. But I always have a fanny pack, some sort of day pack, because I'm often hiking with multiple people. It's nice to have one person. Maybe you put your lunch in there and go find a great hike to go way up in the hills and have a nice lunch there and come on back down. So definitely carrying that along with some safety equipment that goes in there, and some water stuff, and even just some water's your biggest help getting yourself out of a situation. So I always will carry a life straw, or this is tablets that'll help purify water, and we'll talk more about that when we get into water safety down the road. But those tablets stay with me all the time, so that way if I do find a water source for any reason that I've been out longer, I've already drank my water source, or it just spilled, that happens too. So if that happens, I definitely have a way to kind of get myself water on the go and keep myself moving and keep myself hydrated, so I can stay functioning at my highest level, especially when you're in a stressful situation like being lost. You want to make sure that you're at your top peak performance that you can be. Obviously you're not going to be at your peak performance if you're dehydrated, and that can really start to weigh on people as their body starts to shut down and make them even more panicked. So a couple other things. I love watching animals, so I have a nice set of binoculars with me almost all the time. I'm also a Frisbee freak, so this is an easy thing to use around the camping in regards to like campsites. To be able to throw a Frisbee around is great for me. Also doubles as a lovely plate. So if you need to, you can always cut up an apple. It's a great cutting board when necessary as well, just as a little improvisation. And I always have a little toolbox. This is one, like another little like one of those, you'll find them in like clearance bins sometimes, and it's got like 7 or 8 different tools in it: hammer, wrench, screwdriver. These things are really helpful should you have any issues come up with a tent or a vehicle as you're going forward, or just building stuff. And you know, with kids, they want to go and build a fort or something like that, and they gather up a bunch of dead wood and they're trying to get it all attached. This can be kind of a fun extra bonus with that as well. Give them some things to do. One thing I will point out is weather isn't always good, and so this day pack that I have here is not waterproof. So if you are dealing with rainy conditions at all, having a dry sack as your day pack is a really nice bonus. I put a lot of stuff in here when I go camping, so it's always with me, and it's just a storage sack as much as it is the day pack. But should the weather shift and not be very fun in regards to like just kind of being out and about, but you want to carry your rain gear, keep everything dry and safe, especially if you are going on a day hike and you have your lunch and stuff in there. Having a dry sack like this, and basically it's a very strong waterproof material, and the top rolls, and then there's clips that bring it around. So there's no zipper on this, but it really does keep it solidly waterproof, and then there's even a top that goes over that. So the water's going to shed right down on it. Obviously, if you don't have your rain gear on, all that water's going to run into your back, but at the same time, your gear is staying dry, your food is staying dry. Especially like for me, I like to do a lot of photography. I know my electronic equipment is also staying dry in there. So you got your table, you got your chair. We haven't talked about clothes yet. last thing for me is talking a little bit about clothes. So when I go camping, I usually wear my heavier boots when I go on the trip, so that I'm not packing them. They stay on my feet as much as possible. There's just times where you need a break from that, or being around, you've been hiking all day and you come back. Flip-flops are nice to have, especially if you're around water and it's summertime, but I'd also recommend bringing a second pair of shoes. So kind of two of everything, especially for a weekend trip, is kind of my go-to. A lot of times people aren't changing clothes like they normally do, so you just want to keep your undergarments fresh overall. Number two, I usually bring 2 long pants, 2 short sleeves, 2 long sleeves, 2 shoes, 2 short socks, 2 long socks. I double up on the grundies and keep yourself good there. And then I just have usually some sort of extra coat or extra outer layer, at least one waterproof layer and one more like a fleece or something heavier. As far as materials go on those, fleece is really nice because it moisture wicks any sort of heat that's coming off of you, or anything that's wet doesn't stay with it. It dries relatively quickly. When it gets into cold weather and you're really watching out for hypothermia, you want to avoid cotton if possible. Cotton really takes the heat out of your body and just sucks the life out of you. So you'll get cold really fast with wearing like a hoodie. A regular just cotton hoodie can be a really dangerous thing, because all that moisture, if it is raining and cold, it's going to ball up in that hood and it's going to pull a lot of that heat right out of your neck here. And as your heat rises up inside your shirt, the place that you want to hold your heat in is actually going to be the thing that's going to start pulling that heat away from you really quick. So just please know, if you can avoid cotton, especially as the temperatures drop, it's important. Of course, I always like having a couple t-shirts, but there's even things like small, thin wool t-shirts. And wool, a lot of times we have this image of scratchy wool. They've definitely changed the technology around wool. It's very soft, very easy to wear. From like long underwear, t-shirts, long shirts. Merino wool is kind of the term that you'll hear used, and it can definitely be a game changer when weather is not so good and you're trying to keep the moisture off your body. If you're really working hard and doing like hikes up where you're actually sweating a lot, it'll get that moisture away from you. But also, if it should get wet from the outside in from rain, it's something that's easy to dry, but it also won't cool your body off should the temperatures drop. It'll keep your heat with you. So really important thing to think about if the weather is not doing well. So we have our tent, we have our sleeping stuff, we have our food. Food stuff for me, you know, again, I said it last week on the other video, I tend to use plastic when possible. I'm not a huge plastic fan all the time, but around campsites, you don't want to have a lot of glass or plates that can break. People and kids are running around with like bare feet all the time. You don't want to run into a situation where you have a cup that drops over and breaks. So I tend to stick with plastic, and even using like kids' utensils that aren't even sharp. So that way nobody's really has an opportunity to get cut. It's just a nice preventative thing that I can do that really doesn't interrupt my trip at all. I have a couple like kind of sharper cooking knives for cutting up stuff around the dinner time, but other than that, I really try to minimize any sort of sharp blades. Out here, first aid is essential. You might not be near a hospital or somewhere where you can get help real quick, and due to infection and that sort of thing, I really want to make sure that I'm trying to avoid that at all costs, and being preventative with that is not having a ton of sharp utensils kind of laying around. So pots and pans, I keep it really basic. Again, if you're using a stove like this, and you can keep that plastic handle on kind of the lower end pots and pans that you might find at a garage sale or a Value Village, if you're trying to keep your costs down and get a setup going. A couple pots and pans, one big pot, I mean, that's all you really need. You can fry eggs in that if you need to. We don't think about it a lot, but it's definitely possible. And to set that on top, the reason why I talk about the plastic handles, if you're cooking over open flame and more campfire style, that plastic handle will melt, and that's not fun to pick up because it'll hold its form until you pick it up and then you'll grab it. And if anybody's like dripped wax on their hand or anything, you can't get that, can't get it off. Having plastic melt into your hand and you can't get that plastic off, and it's all burning, not good. Definitely that's another reason for that, having that first aid. But preventatively, that's why you'll see a lot of people that cook open flame use cast iron skillets and that sort of thing, because that handle doesn't melt. You also just have to be more aware of the heat that transfers to that handle as you're using it. Little things that people forget sometimes. Can opener. They come out there, they think they're going to open up a can of beans, pork and beans. They're gonna cook some hot dogs over the fire. They're gonna have some, they're gonna put some baked beans in the pot, and they forget that they don't have a can opener. So little things like can openers. Also, how are you going to clean those pots and pans? And a lot of people will grab the stuff and then they forget that they need to clean it. So having a little biodegradable soap, which is nice. Soap has a pretty bad effect in nature, so you can find the biodegradable soap around you at grocery stores or a camping store. It's inexpensive and it does a lot better for the environment in regards to its effects should you kind of do a washout and have a little spot where you wash your dishes out. The world will appreciate you better with a little biodegradable soap, and also some sort of scouring pad. So lots of times people are cooking with flames and heat sources that they're not used to. That means sometimes there's some scalding that can happen on the outside, or people forget about it because they're busy with other things. And you want to be able to scrub that food out, especially when it comes to storing your food at night. That pot and pan can also be hoisted up in a way if you do feel like there's some food related smells, or like animals have like 1,000 times better smell than what humans do. They're definitely going to smell everything. So just remember when you are camping, in regards to like your clothing, you also want to bring like a bag of your toothpaste and deodorant and all that. All that's going to go up in that tree too. So you don't want to keep anything that has scent, like minty flavored stuff. All that stuff that has kind of a sugar sweetness to it, that all needs to get run up that tree and basically out of reach of any critters, because they'll definitely be looking for that and smelling that in nature. So and just having lastly some extra rope. So just having extra strings and ropes around, be able to tie up tarps, anything that you need to tie down if should you be busy. And as far as the wind goes and everything's moving all the time, you might have to kind of make sure things are staying tied down. Maybe your tent needs an extra, needs a little bit of extra help kind of staying firm so it's not sitting there flapping at night if the wind is blowing. And you're like, well, if I just had this one string right there. So always remember to try to bring some extra stuff with you as well. We went through tents, we went through food, just entertainment stuff. Just remembering, if you love to draw, bring that stuff with you. If you like to read a book, bring that stuff with you. If you like the hammock, hammocks are, this is pretty windy. I didn't put it up because it would just be blowing in the background. But hammocks, people are loving those. They really condense down nice and small. I live in Minneapolis. You see people out mocking all the time. So it's an easy way to hang out outside. You're off the ground, you're laying back, really nice chill way to relax and take a nap, read your favorite book. Hammocks are, and a lot of people camp with them. When we get into more of the ultralight backpacking stuff, I'll talk about camping just exclusively in hammocks. Some people really enjoy doing that. It's not my thing. I tend to like one-person tents and two-person tents more than a hammock, but that's just me. I have here in this chair also a grate. It's just a cooking grate, just a metal standard camp grate, but I'll bring that most of the time. If I have the space to bring it, I'll bring it, simply because there are times where you pull up and you think that the campsite says it has a fire ring with grate, but the grate's just not there, and you're like, well, how am I supposed to cook over an open flame? I don't have anywhere to set the pot on it. I don't want to set my pot directly into the fire. That handle's going to melt. So having a grate like that can help you regulate heat around your food a little bit better. So if I have the time and space to do that, I will definitely bring that as well. And I think that's it, guys. Kind of a camp gear 101. Make sure you bring your stuff to sleep in. Make sure you have your clothes. You need to start with the outer clothes first and then work your way in. You just need more of. The closer you get to your body, the more you need of it. So that's an easy way to think about it. So you might have 2 pairs of pants and 2 pairs of shorts. You have 4 pairs of socks. So that sort of thing. And hats, outerwear, everybody's a little bit different. I tend to wear a lot of baseball caps. It tends to work well if I need to put a hood up. If I have the ones that have like a full brim around there, I don't like the feeling of putting my hood up if it's raining and have that that piece in the back. But I do sacrifice the sun beating down on my neck all day. So there's some of that will play into it as well. This is kind of general camp gear ideas. This will work for car camping, canoe camping, backpacking, like just those basic pieces of equipment that you want to think about, but they're all adjustable given the specific needs. Like if you're out canoe camping, you're definitely going to want to use a lot more dry bags to keep your stuff, from getting, as you're bringing your paddles back and forth over the canoe, a lot of droplets, especially if you're doing it for hours at a time. Those droplets will slowly start to fill up in the bottom of the boat just a little bit, and if you don't have a waterproof bag, you're definitely going to feel the effects on it. So We'll talk more about it in classes. This is just kind of my tutorial to kind of supplement what classes will get from me this week in the Google Meet. So looking forward to seeing y'all. It's MEA week, short week. Take care. Peace out. Bart the Nature Guy. See you later. Bye-bye.